Hello, everyone. It's quiet in the house today, so I'm going to try it without the headset. We'll see how it works. So, good morning. As you can see, I made it to Faire, and I'm not quite like the Beacon of Gondor, but I'm pretty. Uh, I got some sun, and it was a ton of fun. Um, we had a blast. So every year, my best friend and I go and we volunteer at the New Hampshire Renaissance Fair. And I talked about it on some of my other videos, but this fair does the money that's raised for people coming in the door goes to Rockford Meals on Wheels and the New Hampshire Food Bank. It is not unusual for them to cut a check for $65,000 every year for New Hampshire Food Bank and lesser checks for other places. It's unbelievable. And we had record numbers this year. It was gorgeous. We had people, constant streams of people. Even yesterday, there was a little bit of drizzle in the morning, and we were all like, oh no, what happens? And, the clouds cleared up and the gates were opened at 10. And it was a little slow to start, but we ended up with quite a lot of patrons coming in. It was a ton of fun. So what my best friend and I do is we have a setup where we show medieval spices and cooking and the kind of way people would have lived in the 14th century. And so we're usually associated with one of the live steel fighting groups. In this case, it was the Brotherhood of the Arrow and Sword. And you should check them out, by the way, because they are awesome fighters. And they work with a lot of the people from, if you've watched on, I think it's on HBO, Night Fight. So we had some of the guys from the show were actually fighting with our guys yesterday at the fair and on Saturday. And I got to tell you, there's nothing quite so exciting as seeing guys go after each other with long bladed weapons. Woo! There was also a proposal. Actually, there were a couple of proposals this weekend at the fair, which was absolutely adorable and wonderful. And those people are coming back every year because what a great way to celebrate your anniversary, So the reason I'm bringing all of this up on my author page is that one of the things that's been in my queue for a while and which I've started but haven't found time or made time to work on is my reenactors cookbook. I am in the process of writing a cookbook, and it's more than just recipes because there's a zillion books out there that are just recipes, and you can go online. I post a lot of recipes on I have a medieval cooking webpage, and I post stuff up on there. And so, it's there and it's free. But the reason that I'm doing the cookbook is to provide reenactors, new and old, with ideas on how to work an encampment. We've done a lot of this through trial and error, and it's kind of like reinventing the wheel, and nobody should have to reinvent the wheel. There are perfectly good ways of doing these things. And so I'm kind of codifying all that together into a book, which will have recipes from 12th through 15th century. And then the instructions will include not only how to cook those things at home, where you have a modern stove and you have running water and all the conveniences of the modern world, but also how to prepare those things on a site where you have no running water. This weekend, we had no running water and no electricity. They bring in water for us in big tubs so that we can wash our hands and things like that. But there are no showers, there are no flush toilets, and it's real rough living. And you can't just, make a big tub of soapy water and then pull the drain and the water goes away. You have to work with what you've got. And so I'll put pictures and stuff up for you guys later because I love sharing them. And I'm really proud of everything that my best friend did. She did a lot of it. I was doing other things. But the cookbook is going to talk about how to take your raw ingredients that would have been available to anybody in the 14th century and a little later and a little earlier. There'll be some Viking stuff in there because I like Viking cooking. And how to take those raw ingredients and make a fire, prepare the food for cooking, and then how to cook it. Cooking over a fire is nothing like cooking on a stovetop or in an oven. They are really different animals. One of the things that Mr. Sleary did this weekend was that she baked pies. And the way that you bake pies when you don't have an oven is you use a Dutch oven. Dutch ovens themselves weren't available in the 14th century, but there were pots that were similar to that with lids, and you use them in much the same way. We don't have access to beaten pots at this particular time. We're actually about to buy our first, I think it's a riveted pot, which is iron that's been beaten and then riveted into place. They're extremely expensive today. They would have been the inexpensive pots in the 14th century. Today, when we get it, it will probably be the single most expensive thing on our campsite. And we have period tents. So if that gives you an idea, they are very, very pricey. So we make do with cast iron, which is from the 18th century, but makes do. And the idea and how you do the cooking is pretty much the same thing. So she has these pies, and they're gorgeous. She did amazing pies. The pastry was beautiful. And she takes the pie tins and she puts them into the Dutch oven and then puts the lid on. And they hang on the rack we have like a tripod, and she hangs the pot from the rack for a little while just to let it warm up and kind of start the cooking process. But when it comes time to actually bake it, when you're trying to get the crust to get that beautiful browning and the when it gets all flaky and stuff, she took the Dutch oven off of the rack, off of the tripod, and put it down onto a grate, which we had pulled coals. You get the fire going, okay, but you don't bake over a fire, because you would just burn your pastry. What you do is you get the fire going, and then as the coals break off, you pull those underneath the pot in some way. We had a little metal rack, and she sat the pot on the rack. We pulled the coals and you put them under. And then when it's almost ready and you want to get that nice crispy top on it, you pick the coals up and you put them on top of the pot, because most of the Dutch ovens and the earlier pots have a lip around the edge. And that lip is there specifically to let you put coals on there without them running off. I have to say, I couldn't eat the pies that she made because they were made with flour and I'm allergic to it. But I can tell you that people were threatening to do knife fights. And really, that's a legitimate thing at Ren Fair, because the pies were so good. She did steak and ale pie. It was the smell. The patrons walking by were like, "What are you cooking? This sounds so good. It smells incredible." Every time you crack that lid to check it, the smell wafts out and it fills the whole campsite. These are all things that you can do. We do stews and soups. We did pottage this weekend, which is basically the medieval version of stoop, where you take whatever you have on hand and you throw it in a pot and you put water in it and then you simmer it until it turns into goo and then you eat it. It's very yummy on toast. I believe the army calls it shit in a shingle, but it's tasty. And it's very filling, and you can make it vegetarian, you can make it vegan, you can make it like 99% meat. There are so many different things you can do depending on what you're cooking with. And it's very easy, and it's very forgiving. And so I'll be talking about that in my Reenactors Cookbook as well. I already have, actually. I have a whole section on pottage, because pottage was the food that most people ate every day, from the lowest of the low to the richest person. Pottage was on every table because it was ubiquitous. It was just everywhere. So I have very little time because I have to actually go back to my campsite today, because we have to take our tents down and pack everything up in a truck and bring it home. And I'm exhausted, but I wanted to get this video out. I'm going to have this Reenactors Cookbook out, I'm hoping by next year, maybe earlier if the gods smile on me and all of the editing and stuff for Bloodwater comes through. I will maybe have time to work on it. If everything works as planned, Bloodwater will come out in August, and I will have the end of August and the beginning of all of September and all of October to work on the Reenactors Cookbook. And I have all the recipes already. What I'm doing is writing the content. The how-to. How do you build a fire? How do you know which coals to put underneath your pot? How do you fit physically move the coals. There's so many little nuances that I don't think have really been covered well in other literature. And so I really want this to come out, and I want it to be a good thing. As a side effect of putting this book out, I'm going to be doing a series of videos. Some of you may be familiar with Jazz Townsend and his wonderful Civil War cooking and reenacting video channel on YouTube. I should try and put a link up to that later because he's just incredible. I've gotten a lot of recipes from him, and we use some of them, follow them back in history to period appropriate to what we're doing. The food is wonderful, and he's wonderful. He's very entertaining on the screen, and he does little call-in videos, and he's a lot of fun. I am going to attempt to do the medieval version of this. I'm a bit nervous because I'm new to the YouTube thing, and I'm getting excited. And as you can tell, I don't always look at the camera. Sometimes I'm looking at the screen, and I have to stop doing that. But a girl learns. So I have wanted to do something like this for a while. I am planning on doing it as a promotional piece for the book. But it's not just going to be about the book. I had a chance to talk to yesterday and Saturday to an awful lot of Faire people. And I have had wonderful responses from people. So I'm very excited. I have talked to people from Auntie Arwen's Spices. They do modern spices, but they do a lot of medieval spices as well. And much of the cooking that we do at our encampment is done with Auntie Arwen's spices because she has them, and she's an amazing woman. So I've asked if I do the video, if I can meet with them at a Ren Fair sometime, do an interview with them. And so that would be one of the interviews that I do for the Reenactors webcast podcast. And yes, I haven't really codified all this together yet. I spoke to some of the fighters, and they would love to come and talk. I spoke to a blacksmith. So I might be able to, if I cross my fingers and hope really good, my friends at Tentacles Gate, who provide us with a lot of the hooks and metalwork that we use in our encampment to hold our tent up and hold our food up and put our food on, might be willing to come on and do an interview and maybe do a display of period blacksmithery, which is fascinating. I could spend hours standing at their forge and just watching them. And I have, because I waited for tent pegs. Yay. I spoke with some people who do historical late Renaissance period fencing, and have asked them to come on the show and talk and introduce us to some of the interesting aspects of that. I've spoken to people who do costuming. I've spoken to people who do acting and performing in the way that it would have been done in the 14th century. And so I have this rich group of people who are so excited at the idea of having an earlier period. We all watch Townsend because he's the closest thing we've got to what we want. And so having a show put out that actually is about the medieval era, spanning from the early Viking era right through to the 1600s. And just talking about all walks of life. I'm going to do a lot of cooking stuff because that's what I do, but I want to have people on and actually teaching a little bit about what they do and how you can get involved in your own local community. So, I mean, I can tell you that you can come to the SCA and learn all this stuff. But if you live in one of the areas that doesn't have an SCA chapter, you may have to drive quite a while. But there might be other groups around you, and I'd love to give you that information. And so I'm going to go out, I'm going to get it all together. And what I'm going to do is film about 20 of these little short 15, 20-minute videos. And then I'm going to queue them up so they come out every 10 days. And hopefully I'll keep doing it so it becomes something that we can enjoy going forward. But I'll store them up during the summer when I have Ren Fair and SCA events going on and I'm actually doing a lot of stuff. And then I'll play them out through the winter and maybe share a little bit of the Ren Fair and SCA spirit and bring a little joy to this winter that's coming up. which I'm having a hard time dealing with because it's still cold out here. I'm finally in a sleeveless shirt, so it's not like really cold, but it's cold enough. It's cold enough that I was shivering at night. I was wrapped in cloaks and long sleeves, and I was still cold. So I have to go. I can hear the truck pulling in, so I have to go. I have things to lift, tents to pack, and so many dishes to do. And I don't even want to talk about medieval laundry. Maybe on one of the shows. Have yourselves a great week. Have a look at Bloodstone. The new cover is live. So if you're interested in getting a copy, if you don't have a copy yet, please go out, pick one up. I'll be at a bunch of events. If you let me know you're going to bring a book to be signed, I will happily sign it for you. I have no problems with that. So accost me at Ren fairs or grab me at SCA events, or the book signing is on June 1st at Toadstool in Peterborough, 2 p.m. So I've got so many things coming up this summer. It's so busy and I'm so excited, and there's so many wonderful things. So please come on out and visit and share and chat and talk to me. And honestly, comment on the video. If you comment below and you have questions about anything that I'm doing, I will happily answer them. And if you have ideas for videos that you would like to see, let me know, because I'm interested in, I'm making lists right now and getting things ready. So yeah, that's where I'm at. You guys have yourself a great week, and I will see you next Monday, if not earlier. Bye, guys. I love you.